store retailer blaming the bitter cold winter, a slowdown of West Coast ports, and declining purchases from foreign tourists. Consumer confidence fell slightly in May. A Thomson Reuters Ipsos survey showed uneven progress, and a dip in economic growth didn't have much of an impact. The Commerce Department says retail sales were unchanged last month. Americans bought fewer cars, furniture, and other big-ticket items. Prices of imported goods dropped last month, keeping inflation at bay. Chris Maurer, CNBC.
Have you had trouble with online dating? This is eHarmony founder Dr. Neil Clark Warren. We've created a new solution, EH Plus. EH Plus combines the personal attention of a matchmaker with eHarmony's extensive pool of great singles. EH Plus gives you hand-selected matches and freedom from being online. Get started today. Call 855-930-LOVE. That's 855-930-LOVE.
Do you want to learn how to mask your identity to browse inappropriate websites and stream media while at the office?
Well, we can't help you with that. But among the many IT problems we solve, Barracuda's web security solutions keep online activity clean and ensure internet bandwidth performance. Reclaim your network, like 150,000 other businesses already have. To learn more about preventing web-based threats, visit barracuda.com/web.
It gets real, it's live, it's really live, local and in motion. Every day on KCAA, the Inland Empire's only live local motion talk. KCAA 1050 AM and kcaa-radio.com. Don't miss the fun on Getaway Friday starting at 2 p.m. with The Poor Man. Next, it's Let's Go Shopping with Bev, Jason Stapleton, The Happy Hour with Ben and Alexander, and Langdon Nation. KCAA 1050 AM, where Fridays are great days.
Hey, the name of the show is What's It All About? And this is Dr. Donald Jolly Gabriel. We have a great guest today. I'm so excited to hear all that he has to say and share with us about some things that I consider to be extremely important. Is our guest on the line yet, by the way?
Yes. This is Chris.
Oh, okay. Hi, Chris. Greetings to you. Nice to have you on the show today. I'm very excited about talking to you and some of the things that you've done. You are very, very well-known and experienced gentleman in an area of science that I'm not real familiar with. I know hyperbaric oxygenation very well and the physiology behind all of that. But what I'd like to have you do is just talk a little bit about yourself and what you do and what you're going to share with us today. And I have a bunch of questions to ask you to help me understand better and help our guests understand better what you're doing. I think it's kind of world-shaking, and I'm very, very excited about it. So Christopher Neville is our guest today, and he has some very exciting things to say. And one of the most exciting things is about his life and research and work and motivation and goal orientation. So if you could fill us in a little bit, Chris, about that, I would be so delighted, and so would our listeners.
Thanks, Dr. Jolly, and certainly it's a great pleasure to be on the show. And, I guess just giving a bit of a backdrop to where I've come from and arrived today is, I've always been fascinated with ancient cultures, and here in Australia we have the Australian Aboriginal culture, and there in the States and elsewhere around the world there are what are referred to as First Nations. I was always curious to see how they were able to sustain their life and what they had for medicines prior to the dawn of the pharmaceutical era, and before science had its own pathway of, analyzing some of the active compounds that may be converted or used as medicines today. And so I was really a natural health researcher and trying to look at what it is that we're doing today in our food chain, in our health and understanding that has got really a pandemic that we shouldn't have with all the science and the money that's been thrown at research today. And I just feel that from some of the research, we've definitely identified that there's a couple of pieces that are missing that are very significant, and currently why we're seeing some major problems emerging. But I've had a curiosity about nature, not only from an indigenous or an ancient wisdom perspective, but also looking at how different combinations of things are used for the purpose of achieving and maintaining health, and how different rituals or practices were part of culture. Part of that was also exploring sound and the use of sound, prayer, chant as part of a ritual, and whether that had any impact on health and how and why, and all of those other subtle layers of inquiry.
Chris, can I interrupt you for a minute? What
Sure.
would you mind?
Go ahead.
What you're saying brings to mind some really important stuff that I want to learn more about in depth. You know, there's a lot of work being done with frequency now.
Yes.
Light frequency, sound frequency, things that we look at as being weird, and they're really not so weird. And what you're just talking about, I think, is a part of science that we have ignored so much. And it appears to me, too, that what you might be doing and what your culture that you're studying and coming from has been doing for eons is looking at things that actually help a person's body heal. I don't think we do that. I think our modern medicine is more based on alleviating symptoms and keeping people on medications and drugs that may or may not relieve symptoms, but that's all I see. I don't see any impetus toward actual curing and healing. And is there, in what you do, is there more emphasis on eventually healing something and fixing it?
Absolutely, and it's a great point and distinction, because if all we're doing is we're looking at signs and symptoms and we're treating signs and symptoms, then that's a great business model if people want to be on prescriptions for life. It works out very well for the pharmaceutical companies, not so well for the body. The body was never brought into life as a chemical cocktail. It's one of the great mysteries, really, but the importance about it is that frequency and sound and light and going into the quantum side of things is really that if we think that the body is just a bag of cells and different organs are made up just of those cells, then we're missing out on a very, very important element. And this was really discovered in modern science as a validation of ancient wisdom when they started sending cosmonauts and astronauts into space. We know that a pilot, when he sets out from LA and travels over to Sydney, will have a bearing and will use the magnetic field of the Earth to navigate, and birds and all animals will do the same thing. But when they started sending a physical body out of the atmosphere, and we're not just talking about the gravitational effect, we're talking about the magnetic relationship between the Earth and the frequency that the Earth produces, and it's been measured, it's known as the Schumann resonance, and that frequency of the Earth is actually the same as our brain. And interestingly enough, when you move away from that field, which is what the astronauts and cosmonauts did, they actually had this trauma. And this trauma disturbed the biochemistry within the body. And they were coming back not only quite traumatized and distressed, but the biochemistry was interfered with. And so the research teams in Russia looked at thousands and thousands of cases, they did what they call electrodermal mapping. Basically, what they did was they measured the electrical pathways in the skin, and then they mapped those peaks and troughs, and it showed up as being an identical match. If you've ever seen the Chinese meridian system where they put needles for acupuncture, well, they scientifically validated that that pathway existed. And so that led on to another body of research that showed that the body is not about just nutrients, and we're going to get to nutrigenomics, which is one of the areas that I want to talk about later on in your program. But just to tie it together, the interesting thing was that as they discovered that these meridians matched these energetic pathways that they could measure, they developed this technology called Prognos. And now it's a bit like a little probe, and the cosmonauts would be there. And this is also related to now the International Space Station and how it works and operates today, because they had to measure and monitor. At the end of, if you understand the Chinese meridian system, you'll have these, not veins, but let's call them pathways of energy or chi or ki.
And these are real. I want our listeners to understand that this research resulted in many insurance companies starting to cover acupuncture because of the scientific findings. So,
well, that's it. They've got people that go into space called your astronauts and obviously cosmonauts and others that exist on the International Space Station. They exist long term because of this understanding and appreciation for ancient wisdom, that this energetic pathway has a direct relationship to health, and our Wi-Fi satellite world today and the electromagnetic radiation is subtly affecting our health and creating inflammation and many other things. So it is very much real, it's very much validated, and some of the new areas of quantum physics and other areas of science in that field are actually showing that the subtle energy field of the body, if it's disturbed, can actually cause a range of other diseases. And that's where it cascades from. It cascades from the energetic into the functional and into the structural form. So it's a bit like the higher the frequency to the denser or slower the frequency. And this is where health is looked at from a very different perspective, and it's scientifically validated, and that's what they're using some of the devices to support, not only research, but also in maintaining the health of cosmonauts in extended periods of time and space, and of course astronauts. But they were able to then stimulate these meridians at the end of your fingers and at the end of your toes. There are pathways that connect, and these pathways go through various organs in the body. And so if the energy was moving from one pathway to the other and it had a disruption, that they were able to measure that disruption. If it was overstimulated, then it would need to be sedated to come back into balance. And if it was sedated and needed to be stimulated, it would need to come back into balance. That's what they'll do. And they'll do that every day. And the interesting thing about the research and now ultimately the protocol that they have is it was a very, very clear prediction of disease, is that if they could pinpoint this congestion along this pathway, and if that congestion was not balanced, the body would produce disease. And this was one of the greatest findings. Now, the reason why we don't hear about it more so is purely and simply an economic model of the medical pharmaceutical industry.
I have horror stories. I'm going to tell you a quick horror story. There are hundreds of thousands of veterans who come back with post-traumatic stress syndrome, and or disorder, whatever you want to call it. And they are on drugs, and most of those drugs are costing between $5,000 and $6,500 per month.
Yeah.
And there's no fixing of their condition with these drugs. They do all kinds of things, some horrible things. They are suicidal. They cause suicidal ideation. They cause homicidal ideation. In fact, every single school kid that we've heard about in the last 25 years that have done shootings has been on psych drugs. That's terrible, terrible, terrible.
Everybody. And
now,
that's the first thing that they don't want to look at because you see anybody that's going crazy. Well, that's not a normal state. But if you look at in their pharmaceutical closet, you'll know 99% of the time that there is some form of medication that's in there, and it's really disturbing because what we've gone and done is created an economic model that drives a certain outcome rather than coming back to the principles of life begets life.
You're absolutely right. Now, this is the problem I have. There are a couple 100,000 of these men being treated with these medications, and many of them can't function well at all, even with their medications. We have developed a methodology for, first of all, to analyze the condition. It is not a psychological condition. It is not a mental condition as it is diagnosed to be. It is not. It is a TBI, a traumatic brain injury that occurs because the brain moves in the skull and is injured by the interior of the skull. It's actually tissue brain damage. We've developed a way with hyperbaric oxygen therapy of fixing it. And we've convinced Congress to go along with us to a certain extent, but the other side, the lobbyists, are really fighting us because give me 100 days of treating these boys and men, and we can fix them. 80% of them, we can fix them. They're fixed. They're cured. They're healed. They're living normal lives again. But we're being fought. We're being fought viciously because we're threatening this multi-billion-dollar industry that's treating them with drugs. And this happens over and over and over with all conditions that you're talking about as well. And I empathize and sympathize with your story, and because our story is the same. I want the public to know that as well. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. And the thing is, whether it be the Gulf War syndrome, and there's various Vietnam vets that are still suffering ill effects from Agent Orange and a range of other things, there is a real trauma. And so health and the experience of well-being is not just sort of a one-element thing. There are things that will actually allow the body to come back into its own balance. And with trauma, in addition to oxygen therapies, there are also ways to be able to repattern the experience that are still running on this almost like a closed-loop circuit that keeps coming back. And so they're in this state of, and this is where it comes back to health as well. It's sometimes not what you eat, but what's eating you. And when you've been through and experienced that level of trauma that anybody in war has experienced, there is no framework to come back into society, and so there's this incredible feeling of isolation. And so there's a range of different things to look at that need to be factored, that an individual is not just about an emotional experience. They're not just about a sore left knee. They are a holistic being, and unless we look at it from a holistic point of view, we are compartmentalizing for the convenience of economy and industry, rather than looking at the person as a whole. How is it possible that we can have a painkiller for our neck and we've got a painkiller for our knee that's on the label? You put it in your mouth and the painkiller is the painkiller. But because of marketing, we've been very cleverly convinced that they are different things.
Well, because we have to buy 5 different painkillers for 5 different things instead of one, and that's economically appropriate. You have some interesting things to talk to us about, too, about developments and things that you've done, and I'm so excited to hear about them. What I'd like to do now is, because we're a radio station and we have to take breaks and have commercials, we're going to take a quick break, and this is Dr. Donald Jolly Gabriel on KCAA Radio, 1050 on your AM radio dial. Our show is What's It All About? We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in about 3 minutes.
Attention homeowners, you've seen your electricity bill go higher and higher, and experts predict that average prices will continue increasing. Aren't you tired of throwing away money every month? You could save thousands of dollars a year while increasing your home's value by switching to solar energy with Best Energy Advisor, the leader in affordable solar energy since 1987. Everyone's heard about solar energy. It works day or night. It doesn't matter if it's sunny or cloudy out. And now it's more affordable than ever. One free call to our experts, and you'll find out how to get a solar system installed in your home. Call 800-406-4962 and ask about the zero down 1 year no payment option. Best Energy Advisor makes it easy for homeowners to go solar and handles all the paperwork to take advantage of the government's tax credits, grants, and rebates, saving you even more money. But these won't last forever, so call now. 800-406-4962. If your electricity bill is over $100 per month, go solar and save money. Call 800-406-4962. 800-406-4962.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-643-6931 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-643-6931 to take your call now. Call 1-800-643-6931. That's 1-800-643-6931. Again, 1-800-643-6931.
Hi, welcome to AT&T.
Hi, can you tell us more about rollover data?
Yeah, what do we have to do?
Not a thing. If you're a Mobile Share Value customer, your unused plan data automatically rolls over for 1 month. It's our way of saying thanks.
That's so wonderful.
You know, let's hug.
Oh, that's okay. We don't have to.
I think we do.
Yeah, I think we do.
Nice.
Let's bring it in. Oh.
Oh, wow. And we're hugging. All three of us. Really hugging. Ooh, who smells like bacon?
Introducing AT&T Rollover Data. All Mobile Share Value plans now come with rollover data on the network with the nation's strongest LTE signal. AT&T, mobilizing your world. AT&T reminds you to never text and drive. It can wait.
Available only with AT&T Mobile Share Value plans. Rollover data automatically expires after 1 month or with any plan change. Other restrictions apply. Visit att.com/rollover data for details. Signal strength claim based only on average LTE signal strength for national carriers.
Do you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt? Behind on your payments or barely making minimums? Do your massive interest payments have you running like mad in circles? How long can you keep it up? Stop running. Let the Thomas & Law Group carefully plan your escape. The Thomas & Law Group has proven itself for over 18 solid years, helping thousands of people like you and me reclaim our financial future. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and offices in all 50 states. And the best part? There are no upfront fees at all. You won't pay a dime until the job's done. No upfront costs, no monthly fees, no banking fees. No other law firm does that. I'm a paid spokesperson, not a lawyer, and every case is different. But really, if you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt, call the Thomas & Law Group right away for a free, no-obligation consult with a trained legal analyst at 800-460-9790. Call now because you're tired of running in circles. 800-460-9790. 800-460-9790.
Greetings and welcome back to What's It All About? And Chris, you have a lot of interesting information and we're ready for more.
Well, thanks, Dr. Jolly. I just wanted to continue on just to round off with regard to the post-traumatic stress disorder that many vets are coming back with, and looking at it from more of some of the current areas that I've been researching at the moment. And it's really about recognizing at the basis of all disease is really there's this common thread called inflammation. You know, the inflammation of the central nervous system, we might have neurological diseases, etc. But you look at the inflammation of the cardiovascular system, and in fact, your Chief Surgeon General there is saying that the cardiovascular problem is not really about heart attacks and strokes, it's really about inflammation. And the same thread goes through to inflammation of the skeletal system, inflammation of the central nervous system. All of they have as a common denominator is the inflammation. And in fact, it was featured on Time magazine a little while back, but the importance about it is that if that process is a common denominator, why aren't we looking at that in a more holistic way? And from a vet's perspective, when they're coming back, apart from the emotional and mental trauma, they've also been exposed to many, many areas of toxic waste. And the challenge with the body is that it stores the toxins in fat and fatty tissue faster if it can't eliminate the toxin in its normal pathway of elimination. And consequently, the brain and the heart tend to be some of the fastest areas for it to accumulate. And so just like clouds that cloud the sunlight, this toxic debris also has a way of not only chemically interfering with what's going on, but also energetically. Remember the cosmonauts and astronauts in space, these pathways, it's a bit like buffering on the phone, or when you're not quite getting that signal on your cell phone when you're talking with somebody, is that information that's communicated through this other energetic realm that science is now paying very close attention to doesn't get through. And so we can either look at it from just purely the physicality of it, or also the energetics of it. And what I mean by that is that if somebody is traumatized, well, you can't point to it. It's in this invisible, nebulous realm of experience, and we try to analyze that through non-physical forms of measure. And yet there's also the relationship across the board. So coming back to the inflammation, what we've been working on and developing is a nutrigenomic product. And nutrigenomics is a new area of science. It's under the umbrella of epigenetics, and epi being above genetics. So thinking of it more like a way of nutri being nutrition, and genetics, nutrition talking to our genes, that when we go through trauma, like these events, but also any other form of trauma, or we are exposed to some other environmental, whether it be toxin or other event, our genes can be affected. And there's a fabulous doctor you have in the States there, Dr. Mitchell Gaynor, who's just released a book called The Gene Therapy Plan. And he's an oncologist in New York, in Cornell. And it's a phenomenal body of research which also ties together sound for healing, but also from the nutritional side of things, is recognizing that there are certain foods that we eat that switch on the triggers at the gene level or switch them off. And what we mean by that is simply this. If you've got 26 letters in the alphabet and we assemble those letters to form words, and then those words to form sentences or instructions, that's really how the body uses biochemistry in effect. And so if the body is misreading a letter, so that way the word is misspelt, instead of stop, it misreads the O as being an E, and now it has an instruction called step. Now I'm moving when I should be stopping, and so it's misfiring and causing this other response in the body that shouldn't be there. And so as we age or life events, some our gene expression can actually be affected by the foods we eat, the quality of the air we breathe, and certainly the water we drink, and those other elements called our emotional life as well. But when you tie them all together, it all comes back to a simple combination of the health of a cell will then determine the health of an organ, which will ultimately determine the health of the body. So rather than compartmentalizing the body into systems and organs, we just look at how does any one cell, because when we first came into the world, Mama and Papa got together and we actually started off as a single cell. Now, obviously, the single cell has all of the information that represents our physical being today. But a gene on or off will change that cell into a brain cell or a heart cell or a knee. And so that's how the library is used at the gene expression level. And nutrigenomics is a fabulous new area of science in nutrition that I've been exploring and fascinated with, and the research is really very compelling, showing that there are certain nutrients that talk to our genes, figuratively speaking. And this is really very exciting. There's growing research at the Johns Hopkins on a range of different compounds within certain foods because it has a functional benefit. And so rather than looking at pharmaceutical, what we're doing is we're looking at how we can support the body doing what it was born to do, but over time or through trauma or through lifestyle, those systems or the gene expression are no longer optimally expressed. And so we have this condition called dis-ease. And so coming back to the inflammation arena, that rather than treating the sign or the symptom of inflammation, if we know that inflammation is truly the connecting link with, or a very significant connecting link with every chronic degenerative condition that we know of today, other than infectious, what we have is a really powerful tool, if we use it, to enhance our lifestyles. And that is, we can start to use certain foods to affect our moods and our health and get well, and to maintain health as well. And the certain food compounds, one of them in particular is from broccoli sprout, or broccoli sprout, depending on what state you're from or what country you're from. But there's a compound that sprout produces called sulforaphane. And if you're to do research on sulforaphane, you'll find that there's over 1,000 clinical studies that have been done on this compound. And it's very, very exciting because what it does is it activates over 200 genes that are responsible for defense. Now, Johns Hopkins University have done vast amounts since the 90s in unraveling some of the magic on this, but there's also some other universities in Japan and elsewhere that are also looking at it from a range of other possibilities as well. And ultimately what it's doing is activating the body's own antioxidant pathways, what we call endogenous antioxidant production. So most of us have been familiar with the superfoods and superfruits and antioxidants as being something that we can use to support the body with quenching free radical damage. And that's absolutely true and a very, very important part of getting well and staying well. But it's actually not the most economical way of doing it, nor is it the most effective way of doing it. So the challenge with some of the superfoods and superfruits is that the antioxidant benefit, which typically comes from this group called polyphenols, that molecule or those molecules are actually a bit bulky, and so they're not readily absorbed, probably around 6 to 8% in total. So they work very well in the gut, but they don't necessarily pass that well into the bloodstream and make it to the cell. So if we think of disease starting at the cell level, and we can't get the antioxidant or the fire truck to the cell, that's a problem. But in the marketing world, we've had this is a more powerful antioxidant story, an argument, and that really comes back down to, I call it the battle of the berries. My berry's bigger than your berry. And in effect, it has some validity in terms of some of the tests that have been done in a laboratory, but those tests in the laboratory don't always translate to what truly happens in the body. And I'll explain it this way, is that if you have a fire in the penthouse of a building and you are there with a bucket of water and somebody comes along with a fire truck with a tank full of water, you might think that one's better than the other because one's got more water which puts out the fire, which may be right in theory. But how do you get the fire truck and the water to the 33rd floor of the penthouse? That's the challenge. So the area of nutrigenomics is really understanding this process and mechanism, and rather than sending the fire truck into the building or trying to get the water from the fire truck into the building and up to the 33rd floor, we send this messenger, and he's called a fireman. He's really clever. He understands fire and inflammation, and this messenger, this nutrigenomic compound, knows how to communicate with the fire. So he goes up the stairwell and up to the penthouse, and he walks into the room, breaks this little glass, and pushes a button, and the sprinkler system comes on because the penthouse already has a sprinkler system built in, the same way as every cell has a defense system built in. That's how life begets life. It just needs to be switched on. And this is where activating the defense mechanism and the detoxification mechanism is so vitally important. And so nutrigenomics is really understanding the certain compounds that are known to activate the antioxidant production. We call it the primary antioxidants. And the antioxidants from superfoods and superfruits are dietary antioxidants or secondary antioxidants. And the reason why there's a primary antioxidant made by the body or secondary antioxidant from our diet is that the body will only go looking for the secondary antioxidant when they've exhausted their primary antioxidant reserves. But we've been led to believe that the secondary antioxidants are the solution. And our research indicates that, and also with Dr. Mitchell Gannon and many, many others, that are stating that certain food compounds can activate our body's own antioxidant production. And the most powerful antioxidant that the body has is certainly superoxide dismutase, which can be partnered with the catalase and glutathione peroxidase. Those three work together to neutralize free radicals millions of times a minute. Now, to get an idea of the power of nutrigenomic activation of an antioxidant compared to an antioxidant from a food, when you consume, let's call it a vitamin C, and vitamin C is used to neutralize a free radical, one molecule will neutralize one free radical. So it's 1 for 1, and then it's eliminated from the body. So it's a really poor performance. Whereas when a nutrigenomic compound activates the genes, the body's own manufacturing plant, the genes now will be making millions of times a minute these primary antioxidants at the cellular level inside the penthouse, figuratively, inside the cell. And that's a really powerful mechanism because what we're doing is we're getting to the source of the oxidative stress and the toxicity instead of dealing with signs and symptoms. And so this is a very empowering way of being able to engage a proactive approach to getting well and staying well. It's the old story, if you fell into the water, would you drown? It's like, well, only if you stay there. And it's the same thing with toxins. Is that toxin going to be good or bad? Well, it's probably bad, but it becomes even worse if it stays there. And so if we can support the mechanisms of the body that eliminate, this is one of the keys of nutrigenomics. And so when we designed the product, kcaa-WHAT, kcaa-WHAT was bringing together different known and researched nutrients, and several of them have actually got patents on them. And the reason why the patents are there is that the potency of the ingredient is delivered to the body at a bioactive level. And so with sulforaphane from the broccoli sprout, this is having so many ripple effects, if you will. So it's not, rather than looking at the sign or the symptom, if we can go all the way back to the pathway, there are different stages of disease progression that can actually be interrupted and mitigated before it becomes full-blown. And this is a really exciting thing because most diseases will have some level of toxic stress at the source, which then, untreated, will produce some form of inflammation, which then long-term will turn into chronic inflammation or chronic degenerative disease. And if it's in the cardiovascular system, we'll call it one disease. If it's in the central nervous system, we'll call it another disease. If it's in the skeletal system, another. And so we compartmentalize conditions when in actual fact we go beyond signs and symptoms and a condition tag or label all the way back to the source and the origin, which is at the cell level. And if we can have a cell function optimally, it doesn't matter what organ the cells make up. And this is where we can really target the whole being rather than this fragmentation and ever fragmented way of looking at the body and our well-being.
Okay, I'm overwhelmed now. I'm overwhelmed, and I think it would be good if you could talk to us for a minute about what your new developments have to do with what you've been talking to us about, because it's very technical and scientific, and it also sounds very hopeful. So can you help us understand how this can help us and the listeners and what they can do to get some of this? Is this all part of what your development with the new product? I think it has to do with broccoli.
Well, that's just one of the ingredients, Dr. Jolly. In very simple terms, it's a nutritional drink mix. It's a powder. You add it to water and you drink it. We've also got a kids formula, and it's got a combination of ingredients in there. It's all pure, it's all natural, no GMOs, and no herbicides, pesticides, preservatives, or otherwise. So it's a beautiful product from a purity and potency perspective. But what does it mean to me, the person that wants to get well or stay well, is quite simply by incorporating some of the ingredients that we've put into the formula called Calibrate. What it does is it helps the body do what it was designed to do itself. And what I mean by that is it activates the body's primary antioxidants, so the body has got its own reserve of antioxidants. It's not waiting for the superfood to be delivered in your next smoothie.
Can you help? Can you help our listeners explain what an antioxidant does to help the body? I think people who are listening to this show hear that word all the time, and I'm not really sure they understand what it is and what the benefit is. And I think if they would, it would motivate people to want to do something about it.
Look, great point, and probably three steps ahead, Chris. So we'll just take a couple of steps back. We've probably all heard the word antioxidant. What does that mean? In real terms, oxidation is a process that happens with metabolism in the body when the body breaks down food and repairs and rebuilds.
And oxidation is not a really wonderful thing, right?
It's a natural process, but if the oxidation turns into oxidative stress, it's a bit like you've got if you cut an apple and you leave it for a little while, it starts to go brown, and you can use the analogy of a nail left in the rain. It eventually starts rusting. Well, that rusting is really what's happening at your cells, or that going brown is really what's happening inside your cells due to oxidation and the oxidative stress. And what an antioxidant does is either interrupt that process or postpone that process altogether. And one of the ways of doing that, let's say for an apple, was to give a bit of squeeze of lemon juice on the apple, and it would stop the browning effect. And so what it is, it's really about this, where you've got a free radical is where there's an unpaired electron. Rather than getting too complicated, it's really trying to balance this free radical so it's happy again, and it's always looking for balance and for a pair. And so a free radical has a charge, a negative charge, and it's looking to balance itself back out.
Would this be something like being able to think about spoiling or rotting or rusting?
Exactly. All spoiling and rotting is oxidation. And it's a natural process, but when we have certain things, you can accelerate that process, and that's really not what we want to do. And that's where anti-aging medicine is looking at, even from the gene level, where you're looking at telomeres and different enzymes like telomerase that can help with prolonging this replication process of the cell, and so we can have a longer life. But in real terms, oxidation is happening in your body right now, and it's the rotting or the rusting or the browning of the cells. And all we're doing is, by having a diet that includes high levels of antioxidants in our diet, as well as the secondary antioxidants, as well as helping the body's primary antioxidants, which is the body making its own antioxidants. It helps if the body has a breakout of a fire called inflammation, we already have the bucket of water or the sprinkler at the fire to extinguish the fire before it takes hold of burning.
Well, I think a very important thing would be, the next step would be, we're all rotting. We understand that. We're all rusting. We're all falling apart in a sense. And there are a lot of things we do to contribute to that acceleration of that process. And,
yes.
And what I hear you saying is that there are ways that we can slow that down and, more probably than not, live longer and be a bit healthier. Is that a correct assumption?
Absolutely. It's really about, if you can eliminate toxins from the body, then those toxins are no longer going to help the body with the foundation of inflammation and disease.
Well,
so this is about prevention. It's not about cure.
I want to know. I want to know more about how we can do this and how the people can buy into, especially what you're doing, because you're developing and creating some magnificent things that can help us if we understand how to use it and how to get a hold of this stuff and how to do the ancillary things along with it that will help us get the best out of it. I think this is very, very important conversation we're having, and we have to take a quick break, so we're going to do a quick break right now. This is Dr. Donald Jolly Gabriel on KCAA Radio, 1050 on your AM radio dial, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Hyperbaric oxygen therapy has only lately begun to gain recognition for treatment of chronic degenerative health problems, including stroke, diabetic ulcers, wound healing, brain injury, and many other disorders. Whenever blood flow and oxygen delivery to vital organs is reduced, healing can potentially be aided with hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Are you a candidate for hyperbaric oxygen therapy?
Contact Dr. Donald Jolly Gabriel, PhD, for a free consultation and see if this groundbreaking therapy can help you. Mention KCAA and get a free gift. Call toll-free 1-877-423-7986. That's 1-877-423-7986.
Or go to hyperbaric-solutions.com. That's www.hyperbaric-solutions.com.
Call toll-free right now, 1-877-423-7986. Hyperbaric Oxygen Therapy.
Do you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt? Behind on your payments or barely making minimums? Do your massive interest payments have you running like mad in circles? How long can you keep it up? Stop running. Let the Thomas & Law Group carefully plan your escape. The Thomas & Law Group has proven itself for over 18 solid years, helping thousands of people like you and me reclaim our financial future. They have an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau and offices in all 50 states. And the best part? There are no upfront fees at all. You won't pay a dime until the job's done. No upfront costs, no monthly fees, no banking fees. No other law firm does that. I'm a paid spokesperson, not a lawyer, and every case is different. But really, if you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt, call the Thomas & Law Group right away for a free, no-obligation consult with a trained legal analyst at 800-460-9790. Call now because you're tired of running in circles. 800-460-9790. 800-460-9790.
If you can't seem to stay ahead of your bills, then this message is for you. How would you like to have a large portion of your credit card debt, medical bills, and department store debt forgiven? National Credit Card Relief would like to give you free information on a proven debt forgiveness program. This program has been used by thousands to legally forgive millions in unsecured debt. It's not bankruptcy. It's not consolidation. This special program actually wipes clean the portion of your debt that is forgiven from what you owe your creditors. Call for free information and get all your questions answered in the first free call. The more you owe, the more you can save. If you have at least $10,000 or more in credit card bills, this debt forgiveness program can be very effective. Call for free information and find out more now. 800-546-2909. There is no cost or obligation for the information. Don't wait. Call 800-546-2909. That's 800-546-2909. Get your debt problem solved. Call 800-546-2909 today.
Greetings, salutations, and welcome back to What's It All About. We have engineer may correct me on this, but I'm thinking we have about 6 minutes, Chris. So I'd like you to wrap up what you're saying with whatever points you want to make, but please tell people how to learn more about what you're doing, about the product, about how to get it, about how to get information, whatever you want to tell people to make it easier for them to learn more about what you're doing. I want you to take this opportunity now to do that.
Thank you so much. And yes, look, there's a lot more, and there certainly could be quite as simple as downloading a brochure on the product that could be just put together, make it a lot clearer for people.
Well, let's tell everybody how to do it. So here's what I want to do. Before we do that, I want everybody who is interested in learning to get a pen and some paper, pencil, pen, paper, have it ready so that in about a minute or so, Chris can give us websites, telephone numbers, whatever, so that you can get some information. Because just to say, okay, here's a website and whatever, nobody's ready to write. So you guys who want to write, do it, get ready, get your pens ready, whatever, and we'll break up in a minute or two to get that done. Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Okay, so the website that people can go to is called kcaa-WHAT, CALIBR, and then the number 8, kcaa-WHAT.com. And you can just go there and you can get a report to download, and it'll just tell you all about the product called kcaa-WHAT. And just so that's kcaa-WHAT, CALIBR, and the number 8.com.
And then 8, Caller 8. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and so just completing on a couple of things as far as the primary antioxidant and secondary antioxidant. In real terms, aging, sickness, and all chronic degenerative disease have inflammation as a common link. And so if we help the body deal with inflammation from multiple pathways, then we're more likely to get well, stay well. And the multiple pathways include putting out the fire, and number 2, getting rid of the toxic residue that's within the body, within the cell, that's actually the foundation for the problem in the first place.
Well, inflammation is our enemy. It's our bitter enemy, and we need to do everything we possibly can to not only avoid creating it, but once it's there, we have to get rid of it. It's the cause of a lot of pain, a lot of degeneration, a lot of discomfort, a lot of inflexibility, and ultimately death.
Absolutely. And that's really there's not one human being that can't benefit from addressing that one thing, because ultimately we are going to be either investing in the healthcare system at some point in time. You know, I think the statistics are something like 70% of the healthcare budget is spent in the last 10 days of somebody's life. It's kind of a weird economy where people will wait for the last 10 days and have all of this chase the, this health that we're clinging so desperately to, rather than looking at prevention. And that's really what this product is about, is helping people to take control. And it doesn't matter what the condition, it's really just about helping the body do what it was designed to do. So that's Calibrate, CALIBR and the number 8.com. That's where you can go to get some information on the product. And it's a combination of, there's curcuminoids, which are from turmeric. You might know about turmeric and the benefits of curcumin. It's the most highly researched spice on the planet. There's chaga mushroom, which is highly beneficial for lots of reasons, but certainly from the levels of superoxide dismutase. There's bioperine, which is an extract from pepper that helps absorption by 2,000% the nutrients that you're taking into your body. Cumin, and there's also, we've got a probiotic blend and enzymes in there, because the gut health is directly related to your ability to absorb nutrition, but more importantly, to eliminate toxins as well.
Okay, we have about one minute left, so you'll know. 1 minute. You can say it all in 1 minute.
Okay, so what we're talking about is a way, with all of this research about aging, sickness, and disease, to be able to have a simple, convenient. In fact, when Jermaine Jackson tried the product, he said it tastes like Kool-Aid. It reminded him of being a kid, and that's really what it is. It's just a great tasting drink mix that will help the body activate the primary antioxidant and defense mechanism. So it helps you get well and certainly to stay well. Sports people to vets to kids, and there's a great kids formula as well.
Well, anything that will help inflammation has to be important. And if people will stick with it and do it, it will help you. It will help you. Alleviation of inflammation. Most of our patients at the medical center are plagued with all kinds of pain and discomfort, and much of it is caused by inflammation. Well, Chris, I really appreciate you coming on and telling us all about and calling all the way in from Australia. I honor you for your hard work, and I would like you to call me back in 4 or 5 weeks and see if we could get you on again with some real succinct information on a couple of things that people can possibly do to alleviate some specific problems, and how they can go about getting information and getting products and trying them. That's what it's all about.
That'd be perfect. I'd absolutely love to do that. We can just target what we want to talk about rather than general overview.
Well, and this show can be used. You can record this and use it as a marketing tool, an educational tool. All that information is important, but it's very technical. And we need more practical stuff, too. So I really want to give some time to that. And I want to remind all of you listeners that you have the greatest mechanism on earth, your human body. The human body is absolutely incredible, and you and only you are responsible for taking care of it. Let's honor our human body. Let's thank God and be grateful for the magnificence of our body. Take responsibility for it. Put into it what works, and don't eat the crap we generally put in our mouths. Exercise, breathe properly, do what you need to do to keep your body functioning. Be thankful to God. Use your intellect, your will, your creativity to create a better life. And this is Dr. Donald Jolly Gabriel on What's It All About, KCAA Radio 1050 on your AM radio dial. And we will see you next Wednesday at 3 o'clock. And Chris, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dr. Jolly. Good evening.
Bye-bye.
You're on board KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 AM, the station that leaves no listener behind.
I'm Tom Busby, CNBC Radio. On Wall Street today, stocks swung up and they swung down, and in the end, they were mixed and little change. The Dow was down 7 points, the Nasdaq up by 5, and crude down just 25 cents a barrel. Industrial giant DuPont, a big drag on the Dow today. Shares fell nearly 7%. That's after shareholders rejected efforts by an activist billionaire investor to win a seat on the company's board, but the fight left the company battled. A whole lot of retail stocks were lower after the government said retail sales were flat in April, surprising economists who were expecting a boost in spending after all that wicked winter weather. Shares of Macy's down 2% for those same reasons, and profits fell 13% last quarter. It was hurt by a strong U.S. dollar, that West Coast port slowdown, and a pullback in spending by tourists visiting the U.S. And Walmart will test out a new unlimited shipping service for online shoppers. It'll cost $50, half the price of Amazon Prime. Tom Busby, CNBC.
Have you had trouble with online dating? This is eHarmony founder Dr. Neil Clark Warren. We've created a new solution, EH+. EH Plus combines the personal attention of a matchmaker with eHarmony's extensive pool of great singles. EH Plus gives you hand-selected matches and freedom from being online. Get started today. Call 855-930-LOVE. That's 855-930-LOVE.
Overturned truck, freeway construction, rubberneckers slowing everything down. I travel for work. News like that used to ruin my whole day until I discovered Citrix GoToMeeting. With GoToMeeting, you can meet from anywhere using your computer, tablet, or smartphone. No expensive travel required. And with